Hey, welcome back. I'm excited to look into now a strategy for developing a core team. We've talked about recruiting your team. You should have a solid team ready to go. You should have filtered them and talked to them and gotten them prepared for what's ahead of them. As we enter into a strategy for core team training, I want to propose several things. First, what's important is to cast a vision for training as you look at your core team. You want to think through yourself personally. What is your own vision for the church plant? What is your vision for the campus? What's the community like? What is the feel that you desire for your church plant or campus? Do you have that in your heart? Has the Lord put it there? If you don't have that yet, pray for it. Ask the Lord for discernment on it, because you're going to have a core team of however many people. It may be as small as 5 to 10. It may be closer to 100 to 200. I don't know. Whatever the size of your core team is, they're going to be looking to you for the vision. And so you've got to be able to communicate that passionately and clearly. I would encourage you to rehearse that with your spouse or with your friends or your leadership or with your own senior pastor. I would talk about that. Listen for your own heart to come through as you cast the vision. Don't go into that softly, and don't go in that timidly, but know it. Have it in your heart and cast it clearly. When you look at the core team training, I'm going to propose a 12-week training. So you can put that on your calendar, that I think a solid 12-week training is going to build people in community, in discipleship, in leadership, and it's going to prepare them in prayer and devotion as they walk toward the launch of your church plant or campus. And I think this 12-week training program should happen 12 weeks prior to launching your campus. So that would mean that week 13, you would launch the church or your campus. I think it's highly important that you consider every week leading up to your launch and be strategic and highly engaged in every week and in every bit of the process, because you're going to need all of that time as you're walking towards planting your church or your campus. As you consider the training, I want to highlight two themes that I think should overlap all of your training. I think they should come out, these two themes should come out on week one as you explain them and their importance. But I also think every week of your training, they should be lifted up. They should be elevated in your teaching at whatever part of the core team training you're in. And these two themes are membership and mission. So membership and mission. I believe that the Bible calls us to be faithful members of a local church. There are points in Scripture where you see the clarity of a body of believers serving underneath the leadership of elders in a local church. You have the idea of the elders being accountable for their flock. They're members of a local church. We believe in biblical church membership. And I think membership in local churches has gone by the wayside. I think too many people don't take membership seriously. And what we need to return to faithful biblical church membership. So you aren't just building worshipers for your service. You are building church members who will model biblical membership for the new people who may come into your church in the years ahead. And so you want to highlight the importance of being a faithful, dedicated church member, so that it is not so easy for a member to walk away from your church a year down the road. You want them to feel the weight of the calling to membership in a local church. And then also mission. Mission is so important because we've all been called to live on mission together as Christians. The church is to be sent as a Christian is to be sent. We are all living in communities full of lost people on purpose. We're not there accidentally. God has placed you there. God has given you the opportunity to live under His authority for His name and for His glory in your community. And there are many people living all around each one of your core team people who are lost, who are in sin, who if they died tomorrow, if their names were in the obituary, many of which would end up in hell. And that's a reality that you want your core team to feel. You want your core team to feel like this is different than anything else. I'm called to be on mission. I'm called to live out the gospel where I live. And so you want to invest in your core team. You want to challenge them to not just live for kids' sports teams or their own jobs or their own financial benefit, but to pour themselves out for the purpose of mission in their community. And so membership and mission are going to permeate this whole core team training. You want to encourage them to hold the mission high, because as you get into conversations, as you get into launching the campus, they're going to be going, what kind of worship are we going to have? What kind of building are we going to be living in? And so the temptation to drift away from mission is very probable. It is highly going to happen. There are going to be petty disagreements on certain things, the way you're doing things along the way. What you want to encourage them is say, hey, we're not going to get bogged down with these things. We're going to hold the mission high. We've been called to. The reason we're going to plant this church, the reason we're going to launch this campus is to reach people who are far from God with the gospel of Jesus Christ. So over and over and over communicate, holding the mission high as we go forward launching this church. This training is going to have 3 components in it. It's going to be these 3 components are going to be truth, community, and mission. And we're going to talk about that as we get into this training. How does this flesh out? What does this actually look like? But we want to build people who hold firmly to the truth of God's word. We want to build people who live faithfully in biblical community and serve their local church well. And we want to build people who live out the mission where they are. So we'll get into that in our next session. In this training, I want to encourage you to be focused on prayer, that you would lead your core team to focus highly on prayer, the role of prayer in the believer's life. That's going to permeate these 12 weeks. The idea of prayer, of you're going to begin in prayer, you're going to end in prayer, you're going to have prayer services, you're going to have prayer time outside of that, you're going to be prayer walking, and those things are going to be left a little bit into your flexibility of how you want to lead your core team that way, but you cannot negate the role of prayer in this process. I don't care how entrepreneurial you are or how much you think you've got it together and you know what you're doing. You cannot walk forward without prayer, without God hearing your heart for your church and begging God to do a great work in and through you and your core team. So pray that way. I would encourage you to think through specifically, even right now, as you consider your core team, as you consider who you've been talking with. One of those things that you need to really look at doing is begin identifying people who can lead maybe one of your serve teams. A serve team would be a team where you have a volunteer base of people who are needed in a key role. These serve teams tend to be more hospitable driven, hospitality driven, meaning you're going to have probably a greeter team of some sort. You're going to have a baptism team of some sort. You may have a parking team. You may have a children's team. You may have a preschool team. Whatever those teams are, you want to prayerfully consider who are the people in your core team who can lead those teams. Who would work well with other men or women leading on the parking team? Who would work well in conversation, maybe on the decision counseling team? But whatever these teams are, identify now who could lead these, and those people are going to play a key role in training on down the line. Now, I want to talk briefly about this training. A lot of church plants and a lot of campuses, when they think of training a core team, they tend to think in terms of they want to train in hospitality. They want to train people how to welcome people well. They want to train people on how to be kind and smile at the doors. They want to train people on how to greet people in the parking lot. So they focus a lot on hospitality training, which it will be a part of the training, but they don't focus on spiritual devotion for some reason. They tend to leave out the importance of training in theology. The temptation is just to assume that the people who are in our churches already kind of know the gospel, or they assume because they've heard a testimony, they understand good theology, or they understand the gospel and baptism, the meaning of baptism, and all these different things. They just kind of assume they're having their devotions and they're dedicated to prayer. And I really want to warn against that. When we look at this training, this is going to be a theologically robust training because I don't think we can assume these things. We can't just walk into our church plant core team training or our campus core team training just teaching on how to be nice people and teach on kindness and these kind of things just so we can have good greeters. I think you need to take a much different approach and teach heavy sanctification, justification, the role of the devotional life in the Christian. These things need to rise to the forefront beyond the hospitality. We want to teach what is spiritual warfare and the spiritual warfare that this core team will come into over the next 12 weeks or however long until you launch your church plant or your campus. There's all kinds of things that tend to drift because we just think what we need is nice people who can welcome people into our church. That's nice, but what we need is faithful, dedicated disciple makers who can carry us forward in the years ahead. And so I want to really focus on training in theology and hospitality, not just hospitality. I'm excited about where we're going next. We're going to be looking at the nuts and bolts of core team training. What do we do in that 12-week period? I want to propose to you how I think you should outline your 12 weeks. I'm going to give you the details of those topics and give you a time frame for explaining them all to your core team. I think you'll find it really helpful as you look towards training your team for launch day.